Hello, and welcome back to Misquoted on Movies. Horror movies, for many people, are an instant no.
What?
And in many ways, I kind of agree.
That's fine.
Those cheap jump scares, it has its place in cinema, but it's very silly and all very predictable.
There's something out there.
In today's video, I wanted to examine what exactly makes this collection of movies the scariest of all time. What techniques, tropes, and tricks do they employ to really draw us in
Closer.
and terrify us? So stick around as we wander down the corridor of the scariest horror movies of all time. The Cabinet of Dr Caligari is widely regarded as where horror movies began. I was intrigued to examine exactly what that movie set in motion and what hallmarks have carried through all the way to modern horror. From here, the Universal monster movies really picked up the baton and established the genre as one that audiences were really hungry to see.
It's alive!
I grew up around horror movies like A Nightmare on Elm Street, An American Werewolf in London, Poltergeist, and Jaws. I still don't like going in the ocean, even to this day. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho is roundly regarded as one of the great suspense-laden horror movies, but I like Alien. I remember being blown away by Ridley Scott's 1979 sci-fi horror masterpiece. The production design and art direction was like nothing I'd ever seen before. Scott and his cast presented a premise that, despite its science fiction setting, felt so authentic and real-world. These are not elite astronauts. They're blue-collar, wisecracking regular Joes who are simply doing their job for a payday.
And what about the money? If you want to give me some money to do, I'd be happy to.
But above all, Alien was an absolute schooling in suspense and tension. For the first hour, you don't see the alien at all. And across the whole entire 2-hour runtime, the Xenomorph only just has 4 minutes of screen time. Scott had successfully evolved those Universal monster movies and inserted them into a space setting that the world was so hungry for in the late 70s. I can't think why.
Take over.
That same year, however, Stanley Kubrick released The Shining. Like Rosemary's Baby and Don't Look Now, these movies had also evolved the genre, but in a far more impactful way.
5 months of peace is just what I want.
Audiences could now identify with their characters. The premises were based around very human experiences: isolation, the fear of failure, or having no direction, tragedy, grief, mental health. The protagonists were not a ragtag group of space miners. They're families. People, like you and I. The Shining has long been my benchmark for terrifying movies. A safe family unit is threatened by the very person whose job it is to protect it. Don't Look Now pushes on every parent's biggest fear, the death of a child and the burden of grief thereafter. The opening 10 minutes is excruciating, and as a parent I was watching it through fingers. My daughter around the same age as the victim here. Rosemary's Baby gave us the paranoia of experiencing fear from the ones that we're supposed to trust the most.
Now to a fine, healthy baby. Here, here.
We build characters up so that we can empathise and see ourselves in them. If we're invested in the characters and rooting for them, it's that much more terrifying to see them suffer. Rosemary's Baby and the Babadook both push and pull at our maternal instincts. For many women, motherhood is a defining part of their life. Every parent can relate to moments like these. And single-parent households can in particular identify with the feeling of isolation from a demanding child. What if we, the ones who are responsible for our vulnerable children, become the very threat we want to protect them from?
How about a life that doesn't involve our kids drawing and painting the sick details of some horrific tragedy? Samuel!
So our sense of humanity and responsibility is preyed upon by the most terrifying movies. But what else? Symbolism, iconography, these all feature heavily too. The production design is key. Architecture consistently appears to be a key presence. from the gothic Manhattan buildings in Rosemary's Baby to the asylum in Silence of the Lambs. The Overlook Hotel, the off-season streets of Venice, they're all foreboding, creepy and imposing buildings. Colour too can play a huge role in unsettling us. Here we see a great example. Just a quick frame grab, sample that colour in Photoshop and then use a colour wheel to analyse it. And here we see that the triadic complementary shades all feature so heavily, not in just this scene but throughout the movie. Barely any colour exists anywhere in the house aside from this almost blood-like red and their skin tones. But hang on, where have we seen this colour scheme before? Here it is in that same scene I showed in the montage earlier from Sinister. The Scariest movies will consistently make the house or its setting a character in its own right. I want to commend Hellraiser, mainly because I was delighted to hear it's coming back as an HBO series, but Hellraiser had all the gore that those 80s horror movies thrived on, but its themes were rooted in exactly those which are most emotive to us, love and lust. What we would do for love, what can we be capable of in the name of love? Even if it means sacrificing victims in a demonic room. I've no doubt the TV series will use these same themes again. How exciting that horror seems to have found a new home on the small screen.
Demons to some, angels to others.
Let's talk about performance, and no better place to start than the Silence of the Lambs. Anthony Hopkins won an Oscar for his portrayal of Hannibal Lecter,
I ate his liver with some fava bean.
the incarcerated psychopath helping Agent Starling catch another serial killer. He has only 25 minutes of screen time in the whole 2-hour movie, and he genuinely steals the show. His physicality in these scenes is as menacing as his dialogue, that rigid, unnatural body language and that menacing stare. It's horrid, he barely ever blinks, and when he does, it's very, very deliberate. Mia Farrow in Rosemary's Baby descends from an excited mother-to-be to a paranoid, nervous wreck. Toni Collette was scintillating in Hereditary, grief-stricken, as tragedy hits blow after blow. But of course, Jack Nicholson's performance in The Shining opposite Shelley Duvall. Stories from set recount how Kubrick put incredible pressure on his cast to find levels of performance that just leap off the screen. He essentially bullied them, especially Shelley Duvall, and it's a technique you won't see applied in the modern era. Essie Davis in The Babadook descends from protective, worried mother to hating her child for the memories of her dead husband that the child evokes.
Do you think this is funny?
This is the depth horror needs to take you. Sure, Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees are menacing, but it's Monster of the Week stuff. It's essentially an heir apparent to the 50s Universal monster movies.
Here's Johnny.
That were so loved back in that era. Mystery is another key. Lots of teasing, nods and points to items that will be significant later in the story. That's all commonplace. The Shining is over 40 years old, and there is still mass debate over all its symbolism, iconography, and mysteries.
What about room 237?
Too much for our video today, I feel, but hit the comments if you'd like to see me make a video just about The Shining. Arri Aster loves to do these little nods in his movies, teasing us with images we don't yet understand. The colour red in Don't Look Now always signifies bad things. And also this ball. I found this interesting because balls seem to be quite significant in the movie It Follows. Here, here, and here. Also, symbolism for themes and other cultural touchstones, eating disorders, drug dependency, and, shown here, self-harm.
Okay, someone did this to me too.
This movie was also so clever at really giving us no obvious grounding. The time period in which it's set is just not very obvious. It's not clear at all. The cars make you feel like it's one era. The clothing and fashion make you feel like another.
Okay, got it.
The music is this amazing 80s, 90s soundtrack by Disaster Piece. Oh, and by the way, this is a little cameo here. This high school announcer voice, that's Disaster Piece. Now, sticking with It Follows, what really struck me about it is the cinematography. Photographers and cameramen all try and compose their shots into an aesthetically pleasing image. Using the rule of thirds or the golden ratio, we can be directed around a frame and a scene. It Follows has this tendency to centre away a large portion of its shots. Usually, these indicate there's menace. When you centre frame your subject, It's almost a little claustrophobic. Your eye has no obvious path around the image.
She was staring at me.
So you find yourself darting and scanning around the frame. In the case of It Follows, this is exactly what the director wanted. The demon can appear from anywhere at any time, slow, menacing, and unrelentless. It's a fabulous flip on the cheap traditional jump scare, hiding in plain sight and reinforced with the cinematography. Hereditary did this brilliantly. Wide shots that unsettle you, desperately scanning the frame for a threat, and when you see it, you can't take your eyes away. In The Silence of the Lambs, director Jonathan Demme masterfully places you in the shoes of Clarice Starling. This is her briefing at the start of the movie. Look at the framing. The two faces are in identical positions. You're just so locked into the conversation. Starling looks ever so slightly off camera, but this guy, he's looking directly into the lens, directly at us.
Believe me, you don't want Hannibal Lecter inside your head.
It's almost as though he's warning us.
And what is that?
POV shots gliding around the corners, interview scenes start out here and then end up here.
Thank you, Clarice.
We are in the shoes of Clarice Starling.
Tell me his name, Doctor.
Sound also plays a massive role, whether it be music or the atmospheric mix. This infamous opening scene to The Shining fills us with dread and anticipation. Hereditary placing sounds all around us. And if you have a surround sound system, trust me, this is a great one to watch. The music in It Follows is this wonderful electronica 80s and 90s vibe, very John Carpenter-esque.
Hello?
So all the elements that we've explored today are key, but there's one remaining factor that you won't find talked about on any other YouTube video. For me, a massive part of horror and the enjoyment of horror is the social side of it. Okay, hear me out. Watching by yourself is obviously going to be an experience, but I find it a tortuous one. The fact that you can share the scares with friends or other people in a movie theatre kind of helps you manage it a bit better. A couple of years ago, I just happened to be in Miami on Halloween. Now, if you've never been in the US over Halloween, it's really something special. Everybody makes such an effort. I was at the mall and so many people were in costume. Even people had their pets in costume. And by pure chance, the Halloween remake had just been released. So I had 2 hours before I had to leave for the airport. I bought a ticket and watched the movie. All the cliches of bad horror were in there. However, the audience would boo Michael Myers and they would cheer every time that someone fought back against him. There was guys shouting at the screen when people were going down corridors that we knew they shouldn't go down. If you want silence in a movie, then I think there's a time and a place for that, but this was just such a fun, interactive experience, and it was really a special side of a horror movie. I've only ever experienced this in the US, and I really don't know how well it would go down if you started talking and shouting in a movie theatre in the UK. So I hope you've enjoyed this exploration of horror. It's been a real marathon and an epic task for me to take on, getting all these clips together and exploring everything, but I've had a lot of fun doing it. If there's more content you would like to see, please hit the comments with requests and ideas, and I'm sure to take them on board. I've added my Patreon info now to my About page here on YouTube. If you're on Instagram, make sure you give me a follow. We have lots of fun with movie quotes, mixing them up and doing lots of silliness.
This house is clean.
So it's been a blast having you. This has been Misquoted on Movies, and I'll see you next time.